Andrew Marchand, who covers the media, sports media for the New York Post, joining us on the program. How would you grade last night's broadcast with Amazon?
I think, Dan, you start off pass fail, right? I think if they didn't crash, they pass, which I know sounds kind of crazy right here in 2022, but we were trying something that was different in terms of live streaming. As many people, we don't know the numbers until next week, but there were millions and millions and millions of people watching this at one time. And even though Amazon was very confident and they have all their web services and everything, and it did work out, there was the chance it could crash. I mean, I had people, very important people from other networks, who thought, yeah, I'm not sure it'll work. So it did. So pass fail, and then overall grade, I'd probably give it a A- B+. Pretty good.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, and let me just say, there's a caveat, because then there's people listening like, I had my screen didn't work. It was terrible for me. So obviously I get that on social media. For my experience personally, I had no issues. But obviously, this is going to be something that's a work in progress in terms of how it comes across on individual screens.
Amazon doesn't have to reveal the numbers?
No, they will. They will. The advertisers wanted them to have some sort of way to know how many people are watching. And so Nielsen will be having ratings, but they're not going to come out till next week.
Could you get that on Amazon Prime around the world?
No. This is just domestic.
So Prime Video is only available in the United States?
No, it's available around the world, but these NFL rights are only available in the United States. But you are hitting on something when we talk about the world transforming. That's where the business changes, is when Amazon or Apple or ESPN Plus, when they get all the rights to the whole world, because then you're reaching 2 billion people, and then you talk about subscription, and that's where kind of the world could change over time, 10, 15 years.
What'd you think of Al Michaels' Kirk Herbstreit?
So they're very good. Here's the thing about this stuff. We've seen this with Monday Night Football before they just brought in Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, is that you don't want the announcers to be the focus, right? And so we're talking about Al Michaels, probably the greatest NFL TV play-by-player of all time. Kirk Herbstreit's the biggest voice in college football. So, at minimum, you knew they were going to be pretty good, right? They weren't going to embarrass themselves at all. I thought first half energy was a little low. Al's got a low energy because, he always says he reflects the game, which is when you're doing the biggest games of the years for 3 decades plus, it's easy to do that. Let's reflect the game. When you're doing Jacksonville and the Jets, week 14, week 15, which they have, that one, I don't know if you want to reflect the game and come on, this is awful. So that's something. I heard you talk about the interception. Look, it's Al Michaels, so that was really, I thought that was important. What Amazon did, especially with that main feed, they got Fred Godelli, who's the longtime producer of Sunday Night Football and then did Monday Night before that. Just knew that the broadcast, if you could get it on your screen, was going to be really good, and it was really good. Did they, Herbstreit told me for a story I did that, he wants to be the best booth in sports. Did I feel like it was the best booth in sports on day one? I didn't feel that way, but it was very good.
Yeah, the sound quality bothered me. It was a little annoying to start. Muddy, maybe, but, a lot of times when you try to simulate what the sound is going to look, be like, or what the crowd is going to feel, every time I did something on the road, it was always louder than what I thought it was going to be. And it felt like the sound level was low. But if you have people that helps. The familiarity of having Al call a game helps you from the start. Herbie is familiar to football fans. Carissa Thompson as your studio host. What did you think of the other analyst in there with the studio portion of this?
I thought there's potential. They're doing something different. If you look at the other shows, the ESPNs, the CBSs, the Foxes, NBC, lesser extent, they have older, longtime analysts. This was a little fresher, right? Tony Gonzalez, he was on Fox and CBS. I don't really like him that much, quite honestly. I don't find what he says usually that moves the ball forward very much. But I thought when you looked at Richard Sherman, you looked at Ryan Fitzpatrick, they had some, good off the field, fresh perspective. Kind of want to see them talking more on going at each other. And then Andrew Whitworth, he has a presence to him. He's a guy who I've heard about for years. Obviously a great player, but an offensive lineman who I thought who could be pretty good. And Carissa Thompson I thought was a good choice. So I think here's the thing about it. I don't know if many people are going to watch that pregame show. I think the postgame show is where maybe they can make some hay, get people to hang around. I mean, if you look at Inside the NBA, the most iconic studio show probably ever in terms of sports. The It's the post game that really is where they make their bread and butter. That's where they have their fun and they really. So I think that's where Amazon probably has to focus on. And I think they did a good job of just making an hour for the pregame instead of wasting their time making like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
Could you see Jeff Bezos trying to buy the Super Bowl rights anytime soon?
Well, it won't be soon, but I do think, I now I'm reading things. People are like, well, it didn't transform how we watch. Yeah, like it was not going to change. Like we just talked about, this is what Amazon does. They're the best distributors of products in the world. And what they mostly do is distribute other people's products. And then they make their own in some cases, but they mostly kind of. So what are they doing now? They're distributing the NFL. They made their own product in terms of their booth, which they bought from ESPN and NBC. And so you look at where will we be a decade from now? I think next week people make a big deal about the numbers, whatever they are. Amazon was promising 12.5 million people to their advertisers. If you look last year and previous years, Fox and NFL Network are getting around 15 million for Thursday night. I've been told from a number of executives, both in the league and also networks, to expect more like 7 or 8 million for this first time out. So the numbers won't be there, but where will they be in 10 years, right? And when the next contracts are up, do I think they can be in position to get a bigger deal, get more playoff games? They have a chance to get a playoff game through this deal if they hit certain numbers. But yeah, do I think they could one day get a Super Bowl? I do, and I think, Dan, you're one of the legends from ESPN, and and helped make that what it was. In 1987, when ESPN got the NFL, did it transform ESPN and how we watch sports? I would say yes, right? You could talk about 79 when its inception, but the NFL is what put ESPN on that next level.
Yeah.
Amazon has the NFL. If you're going to build out, and it's going to be different than what cable is, different than what broadcast is. If you're going to build out a sports, having live games, having shows, this is where you start. It's Thursday Night Football, the NFL, and then you build from there. So I think when you look long term, obviously the issue is everyone's going to have to be able to get the stream, perfectly. And I think people act like, well, that's impossible. And maybe it is. I don't know the technology, but where will we be 5-10 years?
Oh, yeah.
So that's where I think, so to answer your question, do I think they'll get it next contract? I'd probably say no if I were predicting. The one after that, I think I could see Amazon in play for that. But even maybe next contract, they have more money than anybody. That's the scary thing for the networks when they compete with Amazon and Apple.
I didn't know if it was a coincidence or not, but the Manning cast was up exponentially that first week, and you have a new booth with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Did you read into anything there?
I mean, I think they're like two things. Number one, that's an interesting question. I think when you look at the Manning cast, it was very popular last year, but you could expect growth from it because more people know about it, right? Like you know this, like you left ESPN and made your own radio show, and even though you have a big name, you still have to have people find you.
Yeah.
Then they have to come back again. So for the Mannings, even though they're Peyton and Eli and very famous and got a lot of publicity, people have to find it. So I'm not really surprised that number. The overall ESPN had to be thrilled. They're close to 20 million. I forgot how long. It was the highest rated, game that they've had. And I think if the goal was forgetting the money aspect of it, and it's obviously huge money that they're spending more than $50 million between the two booths for the year, which is just insane. That said, it felt bigger, right? It felt bigger with Joe and Troy, the Mannings. There was a more of an aura. And what we said at the start with Amazon, you're not talking about the booth, at least not in a bad way, right? It's not, did you see they messed up and, they got a guy on a crane and what are they doing? That's not where, as a network, the league doesn't like it. So we could talk about if that impacts rights and all that other stuff. It just is really bad noise if you're running things, if it's everyone's talking about your booth every week.
Good to talk to you again, Andrew. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks, Dave.
Andrew Marchand, New York Post sports business columnist.